at least 2 chapters on Louisiana. One just on the drilling on land, and then a whole series of songs about offshore drilling. And inevitably, the poor guy is going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks on the rig, and guess what his girlfriend's doing while he's on the rig? I tell you, these women, you can't trust them, can you? There's actually one song where one woman, they're on for a week at a time, and she's rotating 3 different men. So anyway, that'll make for interesting reading, I'm sure. Some of you would remember Moon Mulligan, perhaps. I'll sail my ship alone and sweeter than the flowers. Moon wrote a song called Pipeliner Blues. And I'll have a whole chapter on pipelining songs and how many times that song has been recorded. I've already written almost a whole chapter on the Permian Basin. And, you know, the songs in the Permian Basin, we've got all sorts of great songs from that area as well. Another chapter will be called Oil Patch Songs from the Bayou City and the Golden Triangle. And it'll focus on Houston, Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange. So there's a lot out there, and as I said, no one really realized that this was all available. So eventually, I think we'll get a book out of the deal, but I'm just doing a section at a time. And also, I wanted to make sure that I mention our brand new book just came out, Abilene Stories from Then to Now. Copies are available at Texas Star Trading Company, and they have autographed copies all on the half-title page of all three of the editors. The reason that I brought this to mention today is because it includes my little write-up on Slim and how he wrote Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes. Also, I know that some of you in this group remember Archie Jeffries and Freddie's Butane Boys. We've also got a neat little write-up on Archie meeting Bob Wills in the Windsor Hotel. It's great. I mean, they were recording a few shows, Archie and the boys, and the band said, Bob's staying in the hotel, you've got to go down and see if he'll come up and play with us. So Archie went down tentatively and knocked on the door, and Bob said, come on in, and there he was, sitting on the side of the bed in his underdrawers. And he didn't have a toupee or a hat on, and his belly was just hanging over his drawers. And Archie was taken aback completely. Bob was his hero. And Bob just continued talking as he stood up to put on his corset. And then Bob explained the reason I'm bald is he did a blackface show for many years, and he never really took off the makeup like he should have, and eventually he lost his hair. But he goes upstairs with his fiddle and he plays with them. Unfortunately, Archie didn't know what happened to the tapes after, but Bob was still a hero to him, even after seeing him put on a corset. The other thing about Slim is he was an artist, and I brought this painting, which is Bruce Campbell owns, hoping that somebody might be able to tell me, because Sheila, by the way, let me introduce Sheila Barrow, Slim's niece. Her father was Omar Moore, who was Slim's older brother. And she lives in Clyde, and she's been we've done lots of research together. We found out lots about Slim, and one of the things that we've discovered is we have, I think, 14 paintings of Slim, a whole variety. This is one of the earliest ones that's dated 1956. He did most of the ones that we're finding were done, say, 65, 66, and we have one that was painted just a couple of months before he died. But see, it has a flagpole with a U.S. flag. It almost looks like, you know, it could be a state park or something, but we don't know. It's not from around here. And that's the reason I brought it today, hoping that maybe somebody would be able to identify. But he did one of Fort Phantom. He's done one of the old home place that was outside of Clyde, or Victor, I guess. Jimmy Moore, his wife, was from Voss, which is in South Colvin County, and there's one of the post office. I mean, and I call him an American primitive because, I mean, he works in a variety of styles, and he works, well, this is actually on canvas, but what is the surface that he usually uses? Just a board.
Just a masonite?
A masonite board. We hope to, Sheila and I and Bruce, we hope to put together a show, perhaps at the Grace, and give people an opportunity to see the multi-dimensional personality of Slim. I mean, Bruce Campbell, who some of you might know, he was a high school student when Slim had KWKC, 64, 65, and he would come in and work in the afternoons. And he said, like Gibson Department Store, they could bring in a new piece of advertising. And Slim would read through it one time and sit down at the microphone and do the commercial like he'd been doing it his whole life. And he would just ad-lib in the whole bit. We know how he wrote songs, and now we see how he paints as well. Now, my wife Alice is Dean of Libraries at Hardin-Simmons, and she thinks she knows a little bit about art too. And so I have to sneak these paintings in the back door because she describes Slim's work as crap. But if we do get the show up and running, we'll have an opportunity to decide if it's crap or Grandma knows it. And we hope maybe to discover other paintings. There's stories about stacks of the masonite board in the garage, unframed. And Slim did his own framing. Each painting has a completely different frame. So, you know, that makes them unique as well. And as you can see, I'm kind of excited about it. And, you know, we're still working on this, but it just gives you another insight into Slim. Well, of course, 46 years old, my goodness, that, you know, he could easily still be alive today, you know, but he liked to, what did he say, it says on his cemetery, there is just one way to live, like you were going to live forever. Anyway, that's my presentation. If you have any questions or anything, comments, and if you run across a Slim Wooded painting along the way, give us a holler. Yes, sir.
We're talking about remembering things. This is something I'll never forget about Slim. When we go to the polls for an election, if we hadn't made up our mind who we were going to vote for, Slim Wooded got in a lot of write-in votes, but never did get into office.
He always had little sayings on the radio too. Someone was telling me about when Slim would read the weather, and he would say, you know, we got 3 inches in Clyde, and they got 2 fists in Impact. Now, whether all the listeners understood exactly. So he was a fun-loving fellow, that's for sure. There's all sorts of stories, whether apocryphal or not, about his partying days and that sort of thing. But I think everybody felt like they knew Slim. One of my friends who taught chemistry at McMurray, Lyndall Harris, tells a story in Sweetwater where this guy was at a used car lot and trying to buy a car, and he couldn't get the deal that he wanted. And he said, well, I'm just going to go over to Abilene and get one from Slim Skillet. Because he was on television. What was the car dealership that he?
Western Chevrolet.
Yeah, Western Chevrolet.
Can you tell us about that TV show? Because that had some pretty famous people on there. Like 3 brothers that came to be pretty good.
That's right.
Can you tell who?
Well, Larry Gatlin's going to be at Hardin-Simmons. Is it?
Week after next.
Week after next.
Yeah.
He was here maybe 3 years ago at the Civic Center for a gospel type concert, and Larry had great stories to tell about where they lived, and he mentioned the television show as well. Down in Bowles, just before he left KRBC, and when KTAB moved into the same building, and please give me a break. We want both of our television stations in the same building using anyway. Anyway, they were cleaning out a closet, and Downing saw what looked like the be a ledger, and he picked it up. And this is the kind of ledger where you unscrew and take the cover off and put the pages in. And on the little sticker on the cover had Hillbilly Circus lined through and written in underneath Big State Jamboree. It turned out to be the ledger from 1951 to 1955. And there was a section on concessions, so you could see how much they paid for Dr. Pepper for that particular Saturday night. And you know the Big State Jamboree was broadcast from Fair Park Auditorium, Rose Park. It's where Safety City is now. But there's a section for the performers who came from out of town and what they paid them. Maddox Brothers and Rose, Ray Price, Hank Thompson, Floyd Tillman. I mean, it's just a record of that would be. It's the only place, because they didn't advertise every week in the newspaper. There's also, to get back to the Gatlins, there's also a section for the local talent. So you would have the Blue Sage Boys, you know, that was Buck White and those guys. And then it would have the Gatlin brothers, and in the one column, in another column, it would have who it was paid to. And for all of their appearances, the check was always written to their mom. They were underrated.
Was there a gospel? I thought there was a radio there named Little D-Don or something.
You're right, little D-Don.
And then there was a gospel group that I thought led in the show with they sung about, I'm riding the range for Jesus. Does that sound familiar? Am I just making this up?
Well, see, I'm not from Abilene. I only moved here in
Okay, so they
75.
broadcast on top of the mountain. Larry Gatlin, those guys would go up there. Mama would go with them, and the three guys would go up.
Yeah.
And they had the gospel, of course, Slim did his deal, and then that show, I think, came on at 9:30 on Wednesday nights, I think. And it started out at 8:30, and all the Church of Christ Baptist and Methodist got mad because it interfered with church. They slid it, I think, to 9:30.
Right.
I think it.
Yeah, on the article that I did on Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes, I have a footnote because I went back to the microfilm and KRBC went on the air. Oh, that's another reason to buy this book. James Hallmark, the voice of the West Texas Rehabilitation Center to the television, and of course, longtime announcer on KRBC. He has a great piece in here on the day that television came to Abilene. And he describes going up the mountain, full of rattlesnakes and black Angus and the whole bit. But the Starlight sisters, you know, Teenie and, I'm not going to remember the last name. She was married to James Woods. And, but anyway, Slim's show, KRBC went on the air in August, and his show came on later in the fall, and it ran for almost 2 years. And it shows you how the networks hadn't really solidified their positions because there was a lot of time slots for local programming. And like you said, Wednesday night, I mean, at 8:30 or 9:30, this would be prime time. And yet here's Slim's show. 1955 was sort of the year that everything seemed to wind down. Television show went off the air, the Big State Jamboree went off the air, and that's when network television really solidified a lot of its, yes.
Any tapes survived the Jamboree?
As far as I know, not. Although,
Although
yesterday, Keith Glaze stopped by the McMurray Library, and I wasn't there, and his father, J.T. Glaze, apparently played mandolin on the Big State Jamboree. And he mentioned something to the lady who was there about having some tapes of Big State Jamboree. He lives in Lubbock, and so I'm hoping to contact him and see. That's the other thing. Everybody wants just one example of Slim on the radio doing a commercial, you know, or just to hear him talk. And we've struck out so far. I mean, because you hear all these great stories about how he could do this and how he could do that. His singing kind of gives you a sense of what, but to hear him do a commercial or read the weather and talk about, you know, 2 fists and impact and so on, that would be something. But and one of the other things about KRBC, you know, I came to McMurray in '75, and at that time, I'm not sure when the kinescope tapes from KRBC, they were cleaning things out, and so they just gave them to McMurray. and they were stored in the basement at Radford Auditorium. And this would have probably been about 78, 79, somewhere in there, when the fire department came through for their semi-annual inspection. Apparently, they hadn't paid any attention to this, what was stored down in the basement back there. And they went in and saw all these cans and canisters, and they opened them up, and they're all nitrate film, highly flammable. And they said, you've got to get rid of it. And so it all went to the dump. And as the librarian, I wish somebody could have said something. Even then, we could have done something about it, because, you know, what a kinescope was, you put the camera in front of the television set and actually filmed it off of the screen. It's like the Honeymooners, the Jackie Gleason, you know, how tinny that sort of is. But this might have provided newscasts. We just don't know. So we don't have any recordings of Slim either at this point. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any pictures, stills of the big state jamboree?
I have Anita Lane, who's the chairman of the Taylor County Historical Commission, gave me a program. And it on the front cover, it has kind of it's a shot from far back, but it shows some of the musicians playing on stage, and then on the inside it has some of the performers.
I'd love to see, my uncle Jay Glaze and Keith, there are some recordings that the chief has. So we can never get a hold of them. I've asked him to, but anyway.
Yeah, well, maybe Keith will, I don't know. But we also have Teeny's sister. Oh, shoot. I didn't prepare myself for this other. She moved from KRBC to KFJC Channel 11 in 1955. KFJC Channel 11 was the first independent television station in Texas that was not associated with a network. And she was the first on-air personality hired in the Metroplex. And she was Teeny's sister. Anyway, she came back for something a few years ago, and I don't know if you remember, there was a photo in the paper of the television cast. And it had a camera, and it had Slim standing over at the side in his boots and his western suit. It had Gene Stansberry and Roland Smith, you know, and all of these. And I was able to have a friend who was able to blow it up and get all the pixels out and make it into a nice photograph. But that's the only shot that I know of the television cast, anyway. And the television cast was different than the Big State Jamboree, because, you know, Shorty Underwood and his band, the Brush Cutters, they recorded some with Slim, Don't the Stars Get in Your Eyes, but they were a completely separate group, Lionel Shields and those guys, and so there was a different group of performers who worked with Slim on the television show. Anything else? Well, I sure do appreciate you coming out.